Mom treated me like a servant for years for resembling my bio dad. Now that he left me a huge inheritance, she's demanding a cut, despite making my life a living hell. I'm 21, and for as long as I can remember, I've been paying the price for looking like my biological father. My mother had an affair while married to my stepdad, and I was the result. They were together for 10 years, during which she had 3 daughters. April, the eldest at 26, Lisa, who's now 24, and me. My stepdad had no idea that I wasn't his until I started growing up and looking nothing like him. Or anyone else in the family, for that matter. My older sisters resembled our mom, so he never had a reason to question their paternity, but when I turned out completely different, he became suspicious and decided to run paternity tests on all 3 of us. That's when the truth came out. Only April was actually his. Lisa and I had different fathers, and neither of them was my stepdad. My mother had to confess, and that's when he filed for divorce. After that, my stepdad took full responsibility for April, paying child support for her, but he refused to provide anything for Lisa and me. Mom had to work extra hard to support us, but it was clear from the start that she never saw us the same way she saw April. She adored April and even treated Lisa decently because they both looked like her, but me? She hated me, and the reason was simple. I was a living, breathing reminder of the affair that destroyed her marriage. As a kid, I couldn't understand why my mother was so cold and resentful toward me. She was always cheerful and affectionate with my sisters, but with me, she was distant, irritable, and sometimes outright cruel. I can't recall a single happy moment with her. The worst part was that I didn't even know why, until much later. When I finally found out the reason, it shattered me. Not only was I dealing with an identity crisis, but now I had to accept that my own mother despised me just for existing, and no matter what I did, I couldn't change it. I couldn't even complain about how she treated me. She justified her actions by saying that Lisa's dad and my dad abandoned us, leaving her to take care of us alone. But at least Lisa looked like her, so it wasn't as painful for her to provide for her. With me, though, she couldn't stand the sight of me because I reminded her of my biological father. Instead of admitting her own mistakes, she and my sisters twisted everything around, making it seem like I was the one ruining their lives. They gaslight me constantly, blaming me for their problems. April made sure I knew she was the legitimate one. She'd call me names, telling me I was the reason her parents' marriage fell apart. Lisa joined in, mocking me for looking like my biological dad. She'd say things like, "If only you looked like Mom, maybe we wouldn't have been abandoned," as if I had any control over my genetics. Growing up, I hated myself. I despised my blue eyes because theirs were brown like Mom's. I loathed my nose, my lips. Every part of me that didn't match them. My entire existence felt like a mistake. The neglect went on for years. While my sisters got new clothes, I wore their hand-me-downs. I never got new toys and wasn't allowed to touch theirs. My role in the household was nothing more than an unpaid servant. I was the one fetching them water, bringing them food, doing their laundry, and even making their beds. The only good thing my mom ever did for me was sending me to school. It was a community school. But at least I got an education. When I was 13, I tried running away. I was desperate to escape, but the cops found me and took me right back. I told them I didn't want to go home, but they wouldn't listen. My mom put on a show, crying about how she was a struggling single mother trying to take care of 3 daughters. She made me look like the problem. I tried telling the cops about everything I'd been through, listing out all the ways I was mistreated. But when they asked if I was physically abused, and I said no, they just stopped listening. Apparently, emotional neglect wasn't something they cared about. They patted my shoulder, told me to be a good kid, and left. That only made things worse. After that, my mother and sisters resented me even more for trying to report them. Home became unbearable, so I started working part-time jobs just to stay away. I babysat for neighbors, mowed lawns, worked at video stores. Anything that would keep me out of the house and let me earn a little money. By the time I was old enough to make my own money, I stopped tolerating their abuse. I stopped eating at home and bought my own food. Having my own money gave me some freedom. For once, I could afford things they had always denied me. Lisa softened up toward me, but April? She only got worse, out of jealousy. She would tear up my clothes, break my makeup, and throw away my stuff. I had no choice but to deal with it. I wanted to save enough money to leave for good, but one of my bosses at the video store advised me to finish high school first. He told me that his son worked at a recruitment firm and could help me get a decent sales job if I graduated, so I stuck it out, studied hard, and made sure I got my diploma. The day I graduated high school, I packed my bags and walked out of that house for good. I landed a job in sales, and from there, I worked my way up. I built a stable life for myself, far away from the toxic environment I grew up in. At one point, my mom actually tried to get me to move back home. She even showed up at my workplace, acting all concerned, saying I didn't need to waste money on rent when I could just live with them and pay her instead. I laughed in her face. Living there for free had already been a nightmare. Did she really think I'd pay to be in that hellhole? But there was one thing I still wanted. Answers about my biological father. I had no idea who he was because my mother refused to tell me. When I asked Lisa if she knew anything about her dad, she told me that Mom had said her father didn't want anything to do with her, so she shouldn't bother looking for him. Mom had told me the exact same thing about my father, but I had my doubts. I kept pushing for information, but my mom was stubborn. No amount of pressure could make her talk. Then, 2 years ago, she ran into financial trouble. She defaulted on her mortgage and suddenly needed money. That's when she finally reached out to me. Not because she cared, but because she was desperate. She wanted to borrow money. When my mother finally told me who my biological father was, all she gave me was his name. Nothing more. I asked for his address, but she refused, saying he wanted nothing to do with me. So there was no point in searching for him. I wasn't buying it. I told her I wouldn't give her a single cent until she provided all the details I needed. After some back and forth, she finally gave me an address. The place was nearly 30 hours away by road, and even by air. I'd need 2 connecting flights to get there. I spent months saving up for the trip, determined to meet him, but when I finally arrived, I realized she had given me the wrong address. I was furious. I went back home and confronted her, demanding the truth. I even threatened to report her for withholding information about my father. That's when she switched tactics. She claimed she had been hesitant to give me his real address because his family didn't know about me, and if I showed up, I'd ruin his life. She painted me as a homewrecker, trying to guilt-trip me into letting it go. After countless arguments, she finally caved and gave me his office address, which was just 4 hours away. But even then, she wouldn't stop warning me against going, "Why are you humiliating yourself?" She sneered. "He doesn't want to see you. He's going to throw you out." I didn't care. I took the next bus and showed up at his workplace. When I finally saw him, it felt unreal. I didn't even have to introduce myself. He looked at me and immediately said, "My girl." Then, he pulled me into the tightest hug I had ever received from a family member. That moment was overwhelming, but what I learned next completely blew my mind. My biological father had been paying child support for me my entire life. My mother had deliberately lied to both of us. She gave me the wrong address to keep me from finding out the truth, and she had been feeding him lies as well. She told him that I hated him and wanted nothing to do with him. It was true that his family had no idea I existed. He told me he had been married for 40 years and had 2 grown sons. He loved his wife and didn't want to disrupt his family. My mother used that as leverage to blackmail him for money, all while collecting child support. He said he was willing to meet me and even provide for me if I wanted, but he didn't want to reveal my existence to his family. That didn't sit right with me. He might have been my father, but he wasn't willing to acknowledge me openly. That stung. After that, I never reached out to him again. He sent me several emails over time, but I ignored them. Then, about 6 months ago, he showed up at my workplace. He apologized and said he wanted to make things right. I told him he didn't owe me anything. I wasn't a child anymore, but he said that after meeting me, he couldn't keep living with the secret. He had finally told his wife and sons everything. His sons didn't take it too badly, since they were already grown and living their own lives, but his wife was struggling with the news. They were now in therapy, trying to work through it. Then he handed me an envelope. Inside was an ownership document for a mansion. I was stunned. He told me this was the only way he could try to make up for everything. I asked if his family knew about this, and he assured me they did. He had already set up trust funds for his sons, paid for their education, and left a house for their mother. The mansion was his way of securing my future. I was overwhelmed. I never expected anything from him. If I had wanted money, I could have blackmailed him the way my mother did for 20 years, but I wasn't like her. I told him everything. How I had been treated growing up, how much I had suffered just for looking like him. He was genuinely sorry. He had no idea what I had been through because my mother had fed him a completely different story. I didn't tell anyone about the mansion, but lately, I had been thinking about going to college. I had always wanted to get a degree, but money had always been an issue. Now that I owned a property, I figured I could lease it and use that money for school. That's when my mother found out. Now she won't leave me alone. She's suddenly acting like she cares, but it's obvious what she really wants. A share of the property. She's been trying to gaslight me, saying that she's my mother and that she went through a divorce because of me. So I owe her. When I refused, she outright threatened to sue me, claiming she had rights to my father's estate. I don't know much about property laws or inheritance, but I highly doubt she has any claim. That said, the legal system can be unpredictable, and I don't have the money to hire a lawyer until I get the lease income. If anyone has any insight into this, I'd really appreciate the help. Yeah, call me dumb, But I need advice, thanks in advance. Date 1. Money really does make people act in funny ways. By the way, thanks to everyone who gave me legal advice. I always thought Reddit was just for entertainment, but there are some genuinely amazing people here, as many of you pointed out. My mother has no legal right to the mansion. It was a gift from my father, not an inheritance. She has no claim over it whatsoever. The next time she came at me demanding a share of the mansion, I went nuclear. She threatened to sue me, and I called her bluff. Do whatever you want, I said. She had no legal ground, and she knew it, but that didn't stop her from screaming like a wounded lion. After that last confrontation, things went silent for a long time. I cut off all contact. The only time I saw any of them was when I bumped into Lisa. She worked in the same block as me, seeing how things had turned out for me after meeting my biological father. Lisa pressured Mom to reveal her own father's identity. Unfortunately, her story didn't have the same ending. Her dad turned out to be a German man who had lived in our neighborhood for a few years. He was a student renting a room in a neighbor's house. When he found out Mom was pregnant and would come after him for child support, he fled back to his country. Lisa managed to track him down through email, and he admitted everything. They were in touch, but she was clearly disappointed. I couldn't help but wonder, was she looking for a father, or was she hoping to hit the jackpot like I did? Meanwhile, I had hired an agency to find a tenant for the mansion. 6 days ago, I got a call from them. The agent said he had taken a potential tenant to view the place, but when they arrived, they found 2 women already living there. I was horrified. These women claimed to be the owners and chased the tenant away. That's when the agent mentioned something even more alarming. This wasn't the first time. He had sent multiple prospective tenants over the past month, but all of them mysteriously ghosted him after visiting the property. I asked him to send me pictures of the 2 women. It was none other than Mom and April. I rushed to the mansion. It was about an hour away. The moment I arrived, I didn't say a word. I started throwing their stuff out. One thing at a time. They panicked and tried to stop me, pleading, "Wait, we can explain. Just hear us out." I wasn't having it. I snapped. I don't listen to squatters. It was 2 against 1, but I didn't care. The neighborhood was usually peaceful, so the commotion drew attention. Some of the neighbors must have called the cops because they showed up within minutes. I hadn't brought the house documents with me, but thankfully the agent had a copy. He showed it to the police, and that was all they needed. The cops kicked them out but advised me to hire security. I asked if I could file a restraining order against them, but they said it wouldn't be easy since neither of them had prior felonies. This was their first recorded offense, so they'd get away with it. Frustrated, I called my dad and told him everything. Since I didn't have the money yet to pay for security, he took charge. He said he'd install more cameras around the house. Until now, there had only been one. He also promised to find a tenant for me so I wouldn't have to deal with this mess anymore. That was a huge relief because I had no idea how lease agreements worked. I hadn't heard from the squatters since, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they resurfaced. Update 2. Hey everyone. Sorry for the delay. Life's been busy. College is keeping me occupied. A lot has happened over the past few months, so let's get straight to it. 2 weeks after the last incident, Mom and April showed up at my door. This time, they looked miserable. Mom had lost her job and they had defaulted on 2 months of rent, so their landlord kicked them out. They had nowhere to go, so they moved into the mansion, and after getting kicked out of there, they'd been bouncing from place to place, but now no one was willing to take them in. They begged me to let them stay in the mansion for just a month. Just enough time to get their lives together. I had just come home from a long day and wasn't in the mood to deal with them. I told them I wasn't involved anymore. Dad was handling the property now. They kept pleading, insisting that I talk to him on their behalf. They were relentless. Mom even pulled the "I raised you for 18 years" card. She said, "Can't you do this one thing for me? This is how you treat the mother who raised you all by herself." That was it. I snapped. I screamed, "Yes, you raised me, but not as your daughter. You treated me like a damn housemaid." Years of suppressed anger boiled over. I let it all out. "Did you ever buy me new clothes? No. Everything I had was April's or Lisa's hand-me-downs. Did I ever get fresh food? No, you 3 ate first and I got whatever was left. If there was anything left, if there were 3 slices of something, you all ate and I got a side salad or ketchup. I did all the chores in that house. But did you ever show me any love? Any care? No. Even when I was sick, you didn't give a damn. The only time you bothered was when I got so bad you had to grab some over-the-counter meds. Once, you even gave me something I was allergic to. Do you remember that? Do you? I could have died because of your negligence. And you have the audacity to stand here and talk about raising me?" She stood there, speechless. I wasn't done. The worst part? None of this was even my fault. I look like my father, so what? That's on you. You cheated on your husband. You slept with some random man and got pregnant. And I'm the one who had to suffer for it. I didn't just yell. I unloaded years of pain and resentment onto her. She and April stood there, sobbing. I didn't care. I was shaking with rage. But the second I broke down and started crying, something shifted. They stepped closer. For the first time in my life, they tried to console me. I shoved them away, telling them to back off. They were the ones who had given me nothing but pain my entire life. They stood there, probably thinking I would cool down and cave in, but I didn't. I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Get out! I don't ever want to see your faces again." After they left, I broke down. I cried so hard that I made myself sick. The next day, I had to see a doctor, got some meds, and rested for a couple of days. A few days later, I started feeling restless, lethargic, bored. So, I grabbed my car keys and went for a drive around town. At some point, I ended up passing by my mother's house. It was locked, and some of their belongings were dumped outside. Curious, I called a friend who lived in the neighborhood. She didn't hold back. Apparently, my mother had really screwed up this time. She had been sleeping with her landlord in exchange for rent, but the landlord's wife found out. She went ballistic, stormed into the house, and dragged my mother out in front of everyone. The worst part? Mom hadn't been paying rent for over a year. She was using sex as currency. It's a small town, people talk. I hate to say it because she's my mother, but this woman is something else. Anyone reading this might think it's too bizarre to be real, but trust me, it's the truth. I know it's hard to believe for people who have normal parents, but not everyone is blessed with a normal family. Some of us just have to deal with the cards we're dealt. Meanwhile, Dad had taken over the mansion's rental process, and I was using that money for college. It's not a fancy school, but I'm proud of myself for making it this far on my own. Mom, on the other hand, she tried to seduce my biological father. He wasn't having it. He kicked her out and warned her that if she ever showed up near my mansion again, he'd report her to the cops. That was the last I heard of her. Lisa still texts me sometimes. That's how I found out that April had abandoned Mom too. She married a guy from the next block, a widower with 2 kids, but he had a big house and some inherited properties. Of course, Mom passed on her skills to April. Good for them.